A low, humming thrum rolled across the horizon just before dawn, rousing New Alexandria from its uneasy peace. Along the riverfront, glass towers caught the first hints of light, neon veins still pulsing from the night's last survivors. In the lower district, where the city's heart had always beat strongest, a half-finished mural of children playing under a golden sun was half obscured by scaffolding, unfitting prescience for what was to come. At 5:17 a.m. local time, 3 streaks of iridescent crimson cleaved the sky. Witnesses below described the crafts as impossible geometry, sleek hourglass-shaped hulls that refracted the morning light as though made of liquid metal. Within seconds, all civilian communications blanked out. No amateur live streams captured the moment. Only the city's automated sensors registered the descent, and even they hesitated, as if shocked by what they detected. In the district's emergency shelter, a retrofitted elementary school, 12 children lay asleep on thin cots. Each cot was draped in a patchwork quilt sewn by volunteers, one marked by a phoenix, another by interlocking gears, a third by a simple yellow star. The children ranged from 8-year-old Marisol Chen, whose laugh had once echoed through these halls, to 11-year-old Jamal Richter, a budding tinkerer who insisted on fixing broken radios in his spare time. Their guardians, volunteers everyone, believed the reinforced walls and magnetic locks would hold against any threat. No one anticipated what terror would breach them. At 5:19 a.m., the shelter's power shutters exploded inward with a force that buckled steel frames. Volunteers barely had time to shout warning before alien silhouettes filled the doorways. They were gaunt, nearly twice the height of a grown man, with elongated limbs and smoothed skulls tapering into no discernible neck. Their faces were voids of expression, interrupted only by deep-set eyes that flickered violet. Panic erupted in the hall. Guardians lunged forward, but disintegrator pulses flickered in the aliens' fingers, paralyzing anyone who drew within 10 meters. Dr. Mara Kilborn, on duty as the shelter's volunteer psychologist, felt her legs lock in place. She watched helplessly as 6 of the beings moved among the cots, lifting children one by one without a sound beyond the soft whir of their exosuits. The last coherent sight Dr. Kilborn had before losing consciousness was Lily O'Connor, 10, reaching out and calling her name. Then a violet flash and Lily was gone, snatched through a radius of dimmed air, leaving only her cot and a single, trembling quilt star. When the guardians came to, the shelter was deathly silent. Power flickered back, revealing overturned cots and scattered toys. Action figures with arms askew, coloring books open to half-finished drawings of rainbows and spaceships. The reinforced bulkheads were bent outward, slagged with alien biomatter that glistened wetly under emergency lighting. There was no sign of forced escape, no corridors leading to exit pods, only the empty rooms where children had slept a moment before. Outside, New Alexandria's defense grid roared to life as combat. Drones and hover troopers flooded the streets. Command center screens tracked the 3 alien vessels as they rose almost serenely, leaving tracers of violet light etched against a tarnished sky. For the first time in the city's history, every weapon system was locked to the same target: those ships. Back in the shelter's command node, Lieutenant Rhea Solis barked orders into her comlink: "Seal all exits, sweep for survivors, and get me any biological samples you can scrape up." Her voice was steady, but her eyes, ringed with exhaustion, betrayed her fear. She'd seen war simulations. She'd studied every alien contact. Hypothetical. Nothing had prepared her for children vanished in a flash. Dr. Kilborn, her hands still trembling, moved from cot to cot, checking blankets and corners for any sign of life. Each empty quilt star felt like a pebble in her gut, an accusation and a memorial all at once. When she found one child's teddy bear soaked in crimson, she sank to her knees, pressing her palm onto the soft fur in a futile attempt to chase away the horror. By 6:02 a.m., the 3 vessels had disappeared into the clouds as though swallowed by some unseen rift. New Alexandria's emergency sirens blared a wailing dirge. In the streets, survivors embraced in shock. Mothers wept openly, and fathers stood rigid, fists clenched at their sides. Every screen in every district recapped the same brutal images: empty cots, overturned toys, violet stains on the concrete. No ransom note followed. No communication came from the sky. Only silence reigned where laughter had once been the city's lifeblood. And as the first emergency convoys carried survivors away, the unanswered question burned among them all. Why had the aliens taken their children, and where had they gone? The morning after the raid, New Alexandria awoke to an eerie hush. Streets that had thrummed with early traders and maintenance drones now lay deserted, save for the twisted outlines of barricades hastily erected overnight. Hover patrols circled overhead, their sensors combing every corner, yet still no sign of the missing children or their alien captors. A city grieves at dawn's pale light. Families poured into the Grand Plaza, clutching photographs and quilts, the same quilts that once draped their children's cots. Candles were lit in neat, trembling rows around a makeshift memorial, a wide stone basin, once a fountain, now empty, its basin cradling petals of white and violet lilies. Each blossom represented a child, and their names, Marisol Chen, Jamal Richter, Lily O'Connor, and 9 others, were written on laminated cards pinned to the rim. Mothers knelt beside the flowers, their tears falling hot and silent as they traced the print of each name. Fathers stood with arms around them, offering what comfort they could but staring blankly as though caught between shock and a rage they dared not voice. Passers-by bowed their heads or placed their own flowers by the basin. No one spoke above a whisper. Dr. Kilbourne's charge. By mid-morning, Dr. Mara Kilbourne arrived at the plaza, notebook in hand. As the city's chief psychologist, she had expected to console a community in pain, but she had not anticipated the depth of this wound. She carried not only her own grief for Lily but a professional determination to give voice to the silent sorrow gripping the city. She set up a circle of folding chairs beneath a broad canopy. The words, "Share your stories," printed overhead in bold letters. One by one, parents and volunteers joined her. They spoke haltingly at first. A father recalling his daughter's bedtime stories, a grandmother describing the way her granddaughter tapped her spoon on the table when she was excited. With each memory, the circle absorbed another fragment of the missing souls. Yet as voices rose, another grew in the back of each throat. Anger. Rage at powerless technology that failed to intercept the ships. Fury at alien cruelty that knew no boundaries. Frustration at the city's inability to find even a trace of their children. Dr. Kilbourne recorded every word, every sob, every tremor of anger, knowing that to heal they first had to be heard. Shadows of nightmares. That evening, when the city's lights dimmed to conserve power, nightmares spread like a contagion. Emergency clinics opened night wards for those unable to sleep. Volunteers plagued by visions of pale figures dragging children through humming corridors. Soldiers haunted by phantom cries in empty barracks. New Alexandria's hospitals became as much havens for psychological wounds as for physical ones. Dr. Kilbourne's support unit fielded hundreds of calls. She recognized the pattern instantly, collective trauma amplified by the unknown. So she devised an unconventional therapy, art sessions under the shattered dome of the old planetarium. Children who had been in adjacent shelters, but survived, were invited to paint their dreams and nightmares on the curved walls. By externalizing their fears in vivid strokes, the survivors began to reclaim fragments of control over their minds. A silent vigil on. The third night, at 10 p.m., an uneasy stillness settled over New Alexandria. Across the city, families stood at their windows, leaving a single light on as a sign of hope and remembrance. Streetlights flickered in response, their usual automated cycle overridden by emergency protocols. In every window, one small lamp, oftentimes a violet LED, glowed against the dark. From afar, the city looked like a constellation of morning stars, each light a promise that they would not forget. And somewhere, in the quiet, parents whispered the names of their children into the night, hoping those names might carry across the vast space that separated them from the unknown. A city poised by the end of the vigil, a new resolve had crystallized. Military strategists met with engineers, volunteers formed search parties to comb the riverbanks and underground tunnels. Scientists pored over the scant alien biomatter samples recovered from the shelter's walls, searching for molecular clues. Everywhere the question burned: where did they go? And how can we bring them back? As New Alexandria braced itself for the answers, every heart pulsed with the same desperate hope. Under the shroud of grief, an unspoken promise had taken root. They would honor the children's memory not just with tears but with action. And should the aliens ever return, the city would stand ready, no longer in silence but united in purpose. At precisely 0037 on June 8, 2025, the air above New Alexandria trembled once more. In the shadow-draped streets of the lower district, hover troopers traded wary glances as their scanners flickered with electromagnetic surges. The clouds parted in a silent convulsion, and there they were, 3 vessels identical to those that had stolen the children, descending like judgment from the void. A ripple of violet light shimmered along each hull as they lowered to hover, a few dozen meters above the ruined schoolyard. The ground beneath them pulsed in time with an otherworldly hum, sending birds scattering and comms networks crackling. Lieutenant Rhea Solis barked into her comlink, "Hold your positions, do. Not fire unless ordered." But even her voice sounded small against the ship's unearthly resonance. Then the ramps unfolded. Beneath the violet glow, 2 figures emerged from the lead vessel. At first they seemed adult-sized, but as they stepped into the floodlights of the troopers' helmets, their proportions became unmistakably those of children, familiar children. The first, a boy with tousled brown hair and a crooked grin, matched Jamal Richter's face perfectly. The second, a girl with a braid looped over her shoulder, was Lily O'Connor to the hair's last curl. Their eyes blazed a soft purple, and their movements were eerily synchronized, as though each limb obeyed an unseen conductor's baton. Gasps ran through the ranks. A corporal staggered backward, nearly discharging her pulse rifle in the process. They look alive," she whispered. Rhea's jaw clenched. Alive, or something else entirely? She raised her voice. "Weapons down. No sudden moves. I want them unarmed and unthreatening before we approach." But the returned children offered no response. Only a low, unearthly chant that seeped into the troopers' helmets like a half-remembered lullaby turned nightmare. The violet sheen around their eyes pulsed in time with the chant, and the ground at their feet rippled as if reality itself had been stretched thin. As Rhea took a cautious step forward, Lily reversed her head in a motion too fluid, too alien. Her lips curved into a smile devoid of warmth, and she raised a slender hand. The troopers froze, hands slipping from their rifle grips, as a wave of countervailing energy washed over them. Alarms flared in every suit, heart rates spiked, neural links overloaded. Troopers dropped to their knees, eyes wide with white-blind paralysis. Across the plaza, civilian volunteers watched in stunned silence. Dr. Mara Kilborn, summoned by Rhea and braced against a broken fountain, felt her throat close. Memories of laughter and bedtime stories wrenched at her heart, but the being before her was no longer the child she had comforted. As Lily stepped toward the paralyzed soldiers, Dr. Kilborn raised her arms in desperate appeal. "Please," she called out, voice cracking. "If you've come to return them, let them speak." For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then from beneath the ramp, more figures emerged. 6 more, each bearing the same hollow eyes in synchrony, filing forward, in perfect pairs. The lead child's chant swelled into a chorus that resonated in every chest, stirring old grief and fresh terror alike. And then as swiftly as it began, the chant cut off. The returned children blinked, heads snapping in unison toward the ships. Without a backward glance, they turned and walked up the ramp. The violet ramps retracted, the vessels lifted, and in an instant the ships were swallowed by cloud. Silence crashed over the plaza. Troopers slumped to the ground, gasping for breath as their systems rebooted. Civilians wept openly, clutching at one another, unsure whether they had witnessed a miracle or a mockery. Ria's voice came on the comlink, raw. "Report status. Any casualties?" No one answered. In that pregnant moment, each realized the same truth. The children who had returned were not the children they had lost. And whatever purpose the aliens served by returning these silhouettes, New Alexandria had only begun to learn how deep the horror truly ran. The days following the second appearance were a blur of fluorescent lights, humming instruments, and whispered corridors in New Alexandria's science nexus. Beneath layers of sterilized glass and polymer, teams of xenobiologists and neural engineers poured over the alien biomatter scraped from the school's shattered walls. What first looked like viscous ooze proved to be a lattice of bio-nanofibers, each strand thinner than a human hair, yet woven in patterns as deliberate as circuit boards. Dr. Mara Kilborn watched from behind safety glass as Dr. Evren Sato, head neuroengineer, revived a sample in a saline chamber. Electrodes traced the filament's surface, and a soft monitor beep began to pick up faint electrical pulses, rhythms that matched no known terrestrial brainwaves. When Sato increased the voltage, the chamber lights flickered, and for a heartbeat, the speakers crackled with childlike laughter. A dozen scientists froze, eyes wide. The laughter stopped as abruptly as it began, leaving only static and pounding hearts in its wake. "That wasn't the chamber," Sato whispered. It was coming from the fibers themselves. Meanwhile, across the plaza where the phantom children had appeared, Lieutenant Ria Solis convened the newly formed Aegis Pact. Soldiers, engineers, and civilian volunteers crowded into the old auditorium of the Grand Library. Its stained glass, dome shattered but still magnificent. Holographic displays traced the ship's flight paths. Other panels magnified the biomatter's microscopic lattice. Solis tapped a datapad, projecting a simulation of the vessel's energy signatures. "We thought they were kidnapping and returning the children for observation," she said. Her voice held a brittle edge. "Now it looks like they're broadcasting something back, our memories, our grief. They want us to hear, feel, the echoes." As the pact members murmured, Dr. Kilborn stepped forward. She'd been running late-night therapy sessions in the planetarium, and something in the dome's curved walls, painted with galaxies and constellations, had begun to change. During those sessions, she said, survivors reported hearing voices, snippets of their own children's laughter, calls for help, coming from the walls themselves. She gestured at a live feed showing the Petrarch Planetarium's interior. On camera, faint violet ripples pulsed along the painted heavens. The lights dimmed further, and in the hush the audience heard it. A child's voice, clear and plaintive. "Mama, don't leave me." Gasps filled the room. The simulation stuttered as soldiers checked their comms, but no technical fault was found. Only the echo remained, hanging like a vow. That night, patrols found clusters of the alien fibers embedded in buildings throughout the lower district, under park benches, behind street signs, even lodged in traffic lights. Each cluster emitted the same weak electrical hum, and to the trained ear, a nearly imperceptible chorus of disembodied whispering. When a drone's microphone recorded the sound, analysts could just make out the children's names, faint but distinct: Marisol, Jamal, Lily, over and over. A clandestine field team led by Captain Anya Mirek ventured into the darkest ruins of the old industrial quarter. Under tactical lights, they collected more samples and mapped the distribution, a spiral pattern radiating out from the school's site, as if the fibers had been sown like seeds. Mirek's tactical AI flagged a grave possibility. The network formed a neural mesh, an analog to a brain spread through the city itself. Back in the lab, Sato connected the fibers to a prototype neural interface. As he calibrated the device, the lab monitors glowed violet, and a surge of data flooded the consoles. It was raw memory, brief flashes of bedtime stories, school recitals, the scent of rain on pavement, snippets drawn from the minds of every parent involved in the memorials. Each memory was cataloged, and sent back through the fibers. Dr. Kilburn realized that the aliens were collecting grief itself. "They can't kill every human," she said, "so they harvest our emotions, our sorrow, as some form of resource." Her voice cracked with the weight of that conclusion. At dawn, the pact issued orders. Teams would surgically remove every detectable fiber. Psych squads would expand therapy sessions, teaching survivors to resist the echoes. Engineers raced to develop counter-frequencies, sonic pulses designed to disrupt the alien lattice. Troopers patrolled with launchers loaded not with bullets, but with experimental EMP canisters tuned to the fiber's signature. By day's end, New Alexandria buzzed with urgency and resolve. Every echo purged, every strand severed, became a small victory. But in the quiet moments when city lights flickered or the wind slithered through broken window panes, those echoes still returned, a reminder that the lost children's voices would haunt them until the final strand was cut. And so, as the city braced itself for whatever came next, a new truth had crystallized. This war was not fought with weapons alone, but with the strength to face their own grief, and to deny the aliens the harvest they so cruelly prized. When the last clusters of alien fibers had been purged and the discordant echoes silenced, New Alexandria stood on unsteady feet, wounded, wary, but unbroken. In the weeks since the vessel's departure, the city had transformed its grief into purpose, forging from loss a bulwark against whatever horrors lay beyond the sky. Aegis Pact Ascendant, under the Grand Library's shattered dome, the Aegis Pact formalized its structure. Scientists, engineers, soldiers, and survivors were woven together into 6 specialized corps. Resonance Corps, tasked with monitoring psychic frequencies to guard against any new alien harvest. Fiber Hunters, who continued to seek and neutralize hidden biomatter strands beyond the lower district. Sanctuary Corps, expanding safe spaces, like the refurbished planetarium, where the afflicted could heal without fear of intrusion. Research Corps, led by Dr. Sato and Dr. Kilburn, pursuing ways to reverse engineer the fibers into a conduit for reuniting consciousness with lost bodies. Defense Corps, an elite unit of hover troopers trained to operate the new EMP launchers and counter-frequency emitters. Exploration Corps, preparing for missions beyond New Alexandria's orbit to trace any sign of the alien creators. Lieutenant Rhea Solis, promoted to General of the Defense Corps, oversaw daily drills under violet floodlights. Hover drones traced grid patterns over the city, while engineers tested portable resonance dampeners. "We cannot stop being vigilant," she reminded her troops, eyes steeled with determination. "They took our children once. They will not take them again." Glimmers of hope. In the research labs, breakthroughs emerged. Dr. Sato's team succeeded in isolating the basic quanta of the fiber's neural encoding. By stimulating these nodes with inverse wave patterns, they generated tiny holographic glimpses of the real children, flickering silhouettes playing in sunlight or dreaming in their beds. Although the images lasted only seconds, every team member wept to see Marisol's laugh wave across the projection chamber once more. Dr. Kilburn theorized that, by expanding the inverse resonance field and synchronizing it citywide, they might restore full consciousness to any children still alive within the alien network. The city council, spurred by these hopes, allocated funding to build the Remembrance Matrix, a lattice of emitters across every rooftop, park, and public hall. The Remembrance Matrix on the eve of activation, survivors gathered in the Grand Plaza once more, this time not in mourning but in solidarity. Violet lanterns glowed between white lilies, each inscribed with a promise. We remember. We fight. We live. Families linked hands across the plaza as the first of the Matrix's towers powered on. A hum rippled through the air, harmonizing with the city's pulse. At precisely 22:45, Dr. Sato initiated the inverse wave sequence. The emitters flared pale violet light, and the ground beneath the plaza trembled. Screens around the basin lit up with an array of shifting patterns, a living tapestry of neural data. Then, in the hush, the holographic silhouettes returned. Jamal chasing a paper spaceship, Lily tracing patterns in the sand. For a glorious heartbeat, the plaza was filled with their laughter, but the images faded, replaced by static, and a single fresh spike in resonance readings high above the city's orbital sector. The Exploration Corps, watching from the command bridge, saw on their displays a new signature, the unmistakable trail of a fourth vessel, unseen on any previous scans, accelerating toward Earth. A new dawn silence settled over New Alexandria. Then as one, every member of the Aegis Pact stood. Hope mingled with steel resolve. The sacrifice of 12 innocent lives had forged a city that would never bow to despair. Now, as the unknown ship hurtled homeward, humanity would meet it not with tears, but with a unified front of science, strength, and unwavering will. And so, beneath the violet-tinged sky, New Alexandria waited, ready to greet its next trial, determined that whatever came, they would answer with courage born of grief and light born of remembrance.